Hey everyone, welcome to Lab 2. So sorry for the mix-up. My steps 2 and steps 3b were instructions for another class, for the next class, so I didn't teach those yet. So this is really the instruction I want you to do, so I changed the step 2 and I changed the 3b. Actually, just ignore 3b, just go straight to 3c. So let's do this together. I downloaded this Lab 1 answer, and we're going to emulate this YouTube clip. So step 2 is modify your render function so that you listen for the click events for all those follow buttons, right? So every time we click add user, we want to now listen for all of these follow buttons that are dynamically added. So how do we do that? We do that by going back into the render function, or one way to do that is here's the render function where it dynamically adds all of those markup. So after it does that, here, let's go ahead and grab all buttons, and we're going to use document.querySelectorAll, and we're going to select all the buttons. Now, I think I could just simply say find all the tags with the word button, because I think that's all I have. Actually, hold on, that's not all I have, because I have this add user, don't I? So maybe I need to say article button or form button. Maybe I'll just say form button. So form button, and let's console log all our buttons just to make sure. Actually, hold on, what is that add user button? Oh, it's just an anchor tag. Yeah, so I could say just button, right? Add user, and notice I have now that button. However, notice it's a node list, and that could be a problem. So the next step is to add listen for click events for all those follow buttons. So I could say here, I could say buttons.forEach, and then for each button add an event listener, click, and run whatever, right? Now, because I taught you the map, I'm going to say try the map. So let's convert this node list into an array just by surrounding it with the array square brackets and then using the spread operator. So now, if I console log that same thing, it should no longer be a node list. It should be, see, so node list is not there. It should be now an array of one element. Oops, I don't know why that's there. Okay. Oh, let's try that again with 2. There we go. Okay, great. So the next step is, what did I say here? Upon click, it calls the function isFollowing, which we have yet to define. All right, so buttons.map, for each button, let's add an event listener, click, and for each click, it's going to run isFollowing function, which we have yet to define. So let's define that right now, and to test it, we're just going to say, let's put an E there for our event. We'll just say hi, just to test if it's working. So for each click now, I should expect to see the word hi as an alert. There it is, hi. Let's try it for refresh. Let's try it for second one here. Hi. So that's good. Now here's the thing though. Let me just console log ee.target. So e.target allows me to see what was clicked on. So refresh, add user. So if I click on this follow button, watch the console log. Oh, what's happening? It's disappearing. The reason it's disappearing is because it's doing a GET request, right? Because all of these buttons are of type submit, right? It's just like when you have a form and you click submit on the form, it goes somewhere because it's doing a GET request or a POST request. In this case, by default, it's doing a GET request. So we have to prevent that default behavior from happening. How do you prevent that default behavior from happening? You have to say e.preventDefault. Right, so this E came from here. If I had said event, then make sure you say event.preventDefault. Okay, so let's try that now. Let's see if it no longer disappears if I click the button, click, it no longer disappears, but here is the result of that console. So here I have the button, but the problem is there's no way for the button to know that I'm talking about Rich Freeman, right? There's no kind of like pointer here. It would be nice if I had like the index of where Rich Freeman was in my array of people, and that's what we're going to do now. So what we're going to do, oh, by the way, before I get that, you could also say console log this, and that would be the same thing. You could say add user, follow, there you go, see? This console log is the same thing. So what we're going to do is we're going to put that index, we're going to put like a data dash attribute to get that index in there. So where's that markup? That markup is coming from here, this line. So let's just add data dash, we'll just call it index. Again, you could call this whatever you want. Just call it index. And in here, I want this to be 0 if it's the first element in the array. I want this to be 1 if it's the second element in the array. So how do I do that? Well, just like the for each loop, the map also has the ability to have a second parameter. So not only can you define the element that you're currently working on, but you can just say comma index, and that variable index will automatically be populated with the values of 0 or 1 or 2, depending on which person we're working with. Because again, map iterates each element in the array. So now that we have index at our disposal, we can just say index here. So let's save that and check it out. Add user, add user. So if I click on follow, look at the markup now. Whoops. Oh, did I not console log it? I did not console log it. Let's console log e.target or console log this, same thing. So now if I click on the follow button, look, data-index 0. Let me click on the second element in the array. Data-index 1. Third. There you go. So now I have a way to reference which element in the array I want to modify, right? So in the next one here, use that indexed, here, store data into a constant named index. Yes, I did that. So next step is use that index to access the person from my array. Okay, so let's say const index equals, so how do I grab that index from the markup? Well, I could say e.target.dataset.index, right? Because dataset is how you grab any data dash attribute. Index because I said the word index after the dash, right? If I said some other word up here like idx, then this would be idx too, right? So let's just use idx as an example. And console log my index just to make sure. 2, 3, follow, follow, follow. And notice how each of these console logs are showing up now. Great, so that means I can now use that index to modify my peoples array, right? So my people array is slowly getting all of these different objects, which means I can use people square bracket index to modify the person I want to change. So I can say people index, and what's my next step here? My next step is so as to add a new property called is following. By the way, I removed the word following there because I noticed that in the original API JSON data there is already a following property, so that's why I said use is following. So let's just change that person to have is following. So this one is now going to be sets it to true or false depending. Let's just, you know what? Let's do the let's do it the old-fashioned way. Let's say this: if people index dot is following equals to true, so that means we're currently following them, then we have to make it the opposite. So people index is following equals false. Otherwise, so else, so the opposite of this would be if it was false, That otherwise will make it true. It goes true. Okay, so let's see what happens here. And what if they don't have a property is following to begin with? Then it's going to go to the else, and it's going to simply create it, right? Because simply by declaring .is following, you're creating that new property. So let's see what happens. Let's see. Refresh. And we're going to keep an eye on the people's array. So I just clicked on 1. Let's look at the people array. Currently, Rich has no property called is following, but as soon as I click on follow, I expect, there, I clicked it. I expect now the people array to have a change in Rich Freeman's. And there it is following is true, right? So then if I click on follow again, it should be false. Click. Console log people. Let's see here. Is following is false. Great. So now I can access the property is following in order for this text to change when it's rendering. Right? So let's do that now. So in my is following, after I make the changes, what I want to do, I want to call render. So it's going to display the whole page again, except the properties should affect the text. Now right now it's not going to work because the text isn't dependent on that property. So here is the text I want to change, right? So if is following is true, I want that text to read following, and if the property is following is false, I want that text to read follow. So here, instead of being static, I want that to be dependent on my current person. So again, this person, let's pretend this is Rich Freeman, right? Because map iterates over all the elements one by one. So by the time it gets to Rich Freeman, it puts Rich Freeman's object in here in person, which means if that's the object, that means I can get the properties. So if it's true, ternary operator. So if it's true, I want the text to say follow. If it's false, I want the text to say following. And that should change everything. Refresh, add user, add user, add user. Let's see right now. Oh, it says, is my logic backwards? I think it is. Let me just, oh, right, yeah, it's backwards. I think it's backwards. So if it's true, I want it to say following. And if it's false, I want to say follow. There we go. Refresh, add user, add user, add user. Click, click, click. And notice that it's now functioning normally, but we want the console to display who we're following or unfollowing. So let's back up to is following here. So what we could say here is after it changes it, we can say console log, maybe I'll put a backticks here. So we'll say so what just happened here? If it's true, it's now false. That means we unfollowed. So the text should read unfollowed. Who did we unfollow? We unfollowed people index dot what? Let's use their login. Yeah, you could use login, you could use name, whatever. Let me use the login. Dot login, right? So let's try that, and let's copy that to else as well. So followed, this would be the opposite, following. Right, let's try that. Refresh, add user, add user, add user. Notice it says following. If I click it again, it says unfollowed. Let's try the other ones, and it looks like it's working. And that's Lab 2. Let's just double check their final assignment here. Yeah. Oh yeah, you can try this bonus mark too if you want to. Alright, hope that helps for Lab 2, so submit that and you'll get perfect.